Mitra, you are one of the most consistently joyful people I've ever met. I mean, the world can be on fire and somehow you maintain a smile on your face, but it's not a fake smile. It's not a I'm trying to be positive. It's genuine. There's this levity, there's this lightness to you. It became very pronounced for me, my experience of it, after everything that's happened in LA with the LA fires. Your home was also threatened. You were taking care of your mother, as well as a multitude of people who you coach who have lost their homes and have been impacted by this. I want to understand more about you and your relationship to joy. To start off, what is joy for you?
I laugh because sometimes I have to hide my joy because it can be misinterpreted. But with you, I'm very comfortable. So you see things that maybe many people don't see. I use different vocabulary, and it's not like God sent vocabulary for me to just understand. So I separate joy from what is called happiness, or you can say true joy and joy. Doesn't matter. These are just words. So there is a state of happiness or joy. Let's call it true joy. I think that's what you use. So let's go with that. The true joy is the state of being, meaning I remember or I remind myself that that is my true essence. I have access to that. That's my true inheritance. And by my, I don't mean just Mitra Manesh. I mean the human being's inheritance, right? But just like true inheritance, it may be given to you, but until you use it, you won't benefit from it. You, I don't know, inherited this Lamborghini, you can just park it in the garage. Never ever enjoy driving, which I would love to, Pacific Highway and like have it down and like really enjoy it. So that is joy. That's a state of being. Then there is the conditional joy, that which is different than true joy. It depends on conditions. If you speak to me like this, if you remember my birthday, if you come and surprise me, if you are kind to me, there's a lot of ifs.
So
And
you're
we all
saying
have
if
ifs.
yous, but it's also if my life is in order, if I get the
Absolutely.
job I wanted,
Yes.
if circumstances are in a specific way, then I can be happy.
Exactly. So I call it the world and the people of the world. Things need to be this way, either the world or the people of the world, for me to have this experience. And that's fine because we are physical beings and we want to experience things certain way. We have preferences, no problem. So these two are very fascinating sort of duality that can exist within us. And sometimes it does exist within me, because there is this joyful, unconditional me, then I'm exposed to either personally, professionally, or collectively. I'm exposed to these conditions that are far from what we would prefer as human beings to experience, right? And when you can hold this kind of duality almost at times, because sometimes they're one, everything is going my way and I'm in the state of joy. That's like fascinating. I'll be flying. But sometimes it's just sort of in the middle. I'm so, how are you? Okay. People call it not bad, which is fascinating answer. Not bad, meaning I was supposed to be bad. And now I'm so okay with that. I'm not bad. So that talks about the state they're in. And then there's this state that things are really, truly, and I have verification and evidence for it. And this is happening, yet I have this state. This state is the permanent state. This is my anchor. This is my inheritance that I have cashed in personally. I know happiness, or true joy as we called it, is mine and is mine always. It is what I'm made of, have access to, and can be in this state. But then
Made
there's
of,
this.
yes,
That's
made
what I'm
of.
made of. I'm
Yeah,
made of joy. Absolutely.
I resonate with that. And you mentioned the analogy of you have it, you won't experience it unless you use it. But I understand it differently, and I think you would agree with me. Tell me what you think of this. I see joy as sunlight, as the light. It's always there, but we have clouds that are covering it. And when you remove the clouds, We experience the sun. And it's not something we do, it's not something we use. We don't need to use the sun to experience it. It just is.
Yes.
So it's really a process of removing the clouds so our true essence
I
can come
like that.
about. Yeah?
Yes, I like that very much. Yes,
Yeah.
that's a far more practical aspect of and seeing it. You're right. And the question is, what are your clouds? What are the clouds that are covering your joy? Because yours may be different than mine. Mine might be expectations of myself, yours may be augmentation of life. It could be so many things that it doesn't matter. What matters is to just know, as you said, I love that analogy. Sun is always there and it's always shining. The question is, can I see it or not?
Can you see it and experience it? So most people would say, okay, yeah, my clouds are I'm struggling to make an income right now. I'm at the brink of divorce. My child is currently not doing well in school.
Mhm.
So external circumstances. But you're saying that regardless of what any of those external circumstances are, your joy is sustained. And what you're saying, what I hear you saying, and how I experience you is that you're not denying them. You're not
No,
denying that they're difficult
no,
situations.
no.
You're not denying that if, for the people who lost their homes, that there isn't grief. The experience of grief is a necessary part of the process. But you are saying that that state of joy just it remains
Mhm.
in concurrence with those experiences.
Let me just say something to that because you were saying three difficult situations, and I was smiling, and I need to explain that smile because all the three examples that you were just making up, I had experienced. I literally was literally hungry. When I walked out of Iran, I had very limited, I can't remember, I think it was $800 or 800 franc actually, because we went to Europe. And like I really, really budgeted. So there was like lunch or dinner. It couldn't be lunch and dinner. And it was challenging. I have gone through divorce. It's been one of the most difficult things I've ever done because I wanted to do it human way and fair way. So it was very difficult, more difficult than normal. And I've had children in difficulty in all kinds of areas. So it's not that I'm denying it or saying, put your act together. It's not that, because that's actually might not be helpful because I haven't really registered it. I haven't honored it. Every difficult situation needs to be honored, whether it's mine or yours or everybody's. It needs to be honored and acknowledged, but it needs to be honored and acknowledged within the context and the largeness and infinity of the joy that we have access to.
The way I experience what you're describing, taking it back
Uh-huh.
to the analogy of the clouds, is
Uh-huh.
you can still have clouds in the sky. And, there's times when there's clouds in the sky and
Yes.
there's clouds that temporarily block the sunlight. There's still blue around. There's
Yes.
still some light coming through around, but there's clouds in the sky.
Yes.
However, some people, it gets to moments where the cloud is fully gray. Like there's
Hmm.
just not even a ray of light coming through those clouds.
Yes.
And what was coming to me is that usually life circumstances would be spot clouds in the sky, and they
Hmm.
can be in varying sizes. But when we get the full cloud cover, there's something else that's happening within us that is creating that full cloud cover. For example, resistance to what is happening,
Oh, yes.
resistance to the feelings that are coming up.
Yes. Yes. I've experienced that and personally, and I see it professionally. And the resistance is fascinating that it may sound crazy, but sometimes we are so used to unhappiness that there is resistance to let in the joy. It's almost like we're afraid. What if I'm really, really happy?
It's
And don't
true.
forget, don't forget, as we were growing up, there's a lot of messages that we pick up. One of those messages, and I've literally heard parents say that to their children: don't be silly and laugh for no reason. You know what happens when you do that. I mean,
Mm.
this I have heard with my own ears. Just imagine as a child, or variation of this was given to us, that at the end of every laughter and happiness, there is this like misery waiting for you. At the moment you're just at the height of your episode, like, oh God, we have a saying. What do we say? Well, when is the other shoe going to drop? So we're waiting. We are conditioned to think that happiness is not ours. If it is, it's going to be taken away, and it's going to be taken away in a very, very harsh way. So you better watch yourself and don't be too happy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous when you give it words, but it's not ridiculous. It's actually brutal when you're living it.
Yep. I personally have that experience. For a long time, it took a while for me to
Mm,
truly embrace my
mm,
happiness and
mm.
my joy. I literally felt guilty that I would experience joy, but with a little bit of guilt and fear. Like,
Wow.
I can't be too happy. Right. And there's probably so many reasons
Mm,
that happened, but I certainly experienced that. And I imagine for people who have been influenced by religions that say that we're not good as humans and that we need to continually prove ourselves to
mhm.
show our goodness, that paradigm, I imagine, makes it difficult to
Yes.
give ourselves full permission to be happy for no reason,
Yes.
just for being alive.
We have almost institutionalized unhappiness. It's really interesting. It doesn't need to be just religion, it's also given in other places. Having fun is unusual. And especially for adults, actually. For children, we all think, okay, that's cute. But I am very aware of it because, as you said, I'm not all the time, but I am in joy quite often. And I'm aware of it. It's like, what's going on here? There's like suspicious looks. Like, I wonder what she's up to, um, especially if they don't know me well. It like there's that sense of why. Why are you that happy? And I'm thinking, I want to say, why are you not that happy?
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point. This was true for me in my experience. If the people around me were not happy,
Mhm.
I would feel out of place if I was happy, right? So
Mm,
out of a mechanism to fit in, my fitting in mechanism, my desire to fit in that came from childhood,
yes.
attuned to the people around me. That mechanism, if the people around me are not just joyful and happy, then I would have been hesitant and scared
Mm.
to be joyful and happy, or at least to show my joyfulness and happiness to them if they're not in a state of joy and happiness.
Exactly. And it's important for us to remember then there are two ways to be this happy this often. One is out of, and that's the fear that we have, out of ignorance, that I have no respect for people suffering. I just like, we say, well, whatever kind of philosophy. The other one is out of deep knowing and deep connection. I traveled with my teacher, who was a very senior Buddhist monk, very senior. I mean, people would just go on the floor when they saw him on the streets in Asia when I traveled with him. And honestly, it was like traveling with a little boy. And he was, I think, around his 90s, maybe,
Hmm.
when I traveled with him. And it was just fascinating that I found my match. I thought, oh, good, we played almost all the time.
Mhm.
And by play, I mean, like, he was teaching me, I was asking deep questions. It really was a fundamental trip for me, and how it influenced the way I see the world. But if you were in the car with us or when we were walking, you would think like we're just like such light people and we're just like having fun. And this concept of fun, the meaning of fun, has been really misunderstood. Fun is the doorway. Joy is the doorway. Playfulness is the doorway to understanding the depth of life. to understanding why we're here, to accessing and seeing that sunshine that is so beautifully and consistently shining its warmth and its light.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you, I was addicted to the unhappiness, to the suffering.
I
It's
like that.
become, it's true. It's true. If someone who struggles to find joy and happiness really reflects on it,
Mm,
spends time contemplating it, it reveals itself. We have become habituated to being unhappy.
mhm.
It's familiar. And to go out of the familiar can be scary.
Yes.
And even though it's uncomfortable and it creates pain for us, it's familiar. And it also reminds us, this is true for me at least, that I'm alive.
Ah,
It's some way, there's this addiction to the experience of experiencing, just to have an experience of life, to know that we're alive, right?
yes.
And we can become habituated to just getting that from drama, from suffering, from unhappiness.
Yes, that's a great
So,
point you're bringing. So if my default is that, if my habit is that, and also where I connect what you just said, it's the point of connection. I enter the room, how are you? Ah, this, ah, that. So I want to belong. So how are you? Whatever it is. If I can't find a real reason, it's, oh, parking. It's so difficult to find parking. So it allows my energy to drop at the level and the vibration of the room. Hence, I feel connected. And it doesn't matter that it just took away something from me and something away from the average vibration of the room. But at least I'm one of the crowd and they
mhm.
can see, oh, Mitra. And sometimes people have to look for, I remember the days that I would have to look for something to complain about so that I could connect to people. Honestly, it was just let me see which one should I choose. Should I tell them about? No, no, no. That's too much. That's above theirs. So let me just find something like at the level. It's like, yeah, me too. My God, like if they were talking about their family member, I would find a poor family member that I can complain about. You say, yeah, oh God, my brother. You should just meet my brother or my sister did this. So it allowed me to connect with them, and then I would come out and I think like I like that didn't add to mine, didn't add to theirs, and it was not authentic because when you know better, you need to live better. I know better what my essence is, and most people that I work with and I see they do too. It's just in that moment, it's the easiest one. It's the most practiced way of being is to just go with the flow of the pain. Having said that, I really, really want to emphasize because I work with people and I want to make sure this is very clear. I am not dishonoring the pain of people. I am not saying you're not suffering or your suffering does not matter. I'm saying you can suffer, and believe me, I have.
Mhm.
And yet there is like this happening, and then there is this happening, meaning the context, for those of you who can't see my hands, there, the context, the sunshine, as Ben called it, or the ocean, as I want to call it, there is ocean, then there is this drop happening. There is sun shining, then there is these cloud or clouds happening because people can tell you, oh, but this happened and this was happening, wasn't just one thing. And they can all coexist. And that has been my question, especially when I'm providing a service, whether be it my volunteer pro bono work or be it my service that I charge for. The question is, how can I hold my joy, not discount it, not let it go, not let my vibration drop, while respecting, having compassion, and able to help, perhaps if they're ready to receive it, the person that is in front of me.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting practice that I've been working on for decades.
Yeah. So we established that, clouds can be resistance, clouds can be just our addiction to unhappiness, right? But now let's say we acknowledge that. Okay. So we acknowledge that, okay, there is a part of me that has been habituated to being in unhappiness. I'm ready to break from that. Now we have the real life circumstances that are difficult for
Mhm.
example, someone
Mhm.
who's lost their home in the fires, right? So if the cloud is not the losing of the home, then it must be our relationship to the losing of the home,
Mhm.
how we see the losing of the home,
Mhm.
how we understand it. So, what meaning we give to that.
Thank you.
So, let's use that analogy because a lot of people that we know are dealing with that. Losing the home. How can one what meaning would you give to that? And how would you see that situation?
For a person who's a professional loser homer, home loser, what do we call it? Home loser.
Home
I
loser
counted,
works.
I can't remember. I counted, I think it was 30 something times I have moved in past 40 something years.
Mhm.
And also know where I've lived was where I was from
Mhm.
after a very young age. And just generally feeling homeless, either literally or emotionally and energetically. I can only tell you what I do. When I lose something, immediately what comes to me is, oh, great, there's more room for something new to come. It's like if my, I don't know, chair broke, I would have probably not replaced that. I don't think I get excited, even though I may not be able to afford it. It's just like, oh, I could, bring a new chair. And it's like thinking about birth as opposed to death. It's a very fundamental thing. What do you see? How do you see? And to me, most of what happens in the area of loss or grieving is about our relationship with death. How do I see it? I immediately, and I know that's another podcast. I'm not going to take you there. Don't worry. I, I'm just saying, I could see your face like, oh God, we're going to go to death now. No, but I'm just seeing it as potentiality for rebirth and birth of something new, a new experience. When I lost my home, when I walked out of the country of my birth, I was younger, granted. I was thinking, what am I going to do? I don't have money. I don't have visa. I don't know how to live in this new world. So there was that on the surface, the experience at hand. But believe it or not, I wouldn't probably have vocabulary for it. But there was something deep in me saying, there's so many new things to do and go and live and experience and meet people. There was the excitement, there was the terror. It wasn't actually grief, it was terror. Because at that level, when you lose everything in one day, when you walk out, that's terror. That's
Mhm.
not just like, oh, like I, lost one thing. It was complete terror. But there was also that background, that context of, I probably didn't have vocabulary for explaining it, but it was just like, oh, but there's also something exciting. Something is like wiggling in the bottom of my gut saying, it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I lost my home in the fires. The home is standing, but the neighborhood is gone.
Yes.
And it was similar. There was grief, there was sadness, and there was excitement and joy. It was like, "Ooh,
Great.
this is going to open up new doors." But here's what I'm observing in you
Mm.
is you don't seem to be attached to
Mhm.
things and circumstances. Okay? So in order to be able to see the opportunity of rebirth, you had to be willing to let go of what was lost, to not keep wishing that you had that thing, to reach acceptance.
Mm.
I accept what has been lost. Once we can accept, then we can see the new opportunities. But if we keep clinging on to those things that we think are making us not only feel happy, but on a more fundamental level is safety,
Mhm.
feel safe and secure.
Yeah. Yeah. I lost that illusion of permanence long time ago. It's a blessing when you lose everything literally overnight. When you lose your country, your home, your friends, your community, your whatever it was that was meaning for you, your possessions. I mean, when I walked out of Iran, I walked out of Iran with like a bag which was smaller than the bag that I carry now when I go shopping. So that illusion of these are mine and they belong to me was really beautifully removed from my life at such an early age. And it's not like I did a lot of work, it's just life did the work for me. I realized that these things are just toys that we have developed and we have purchased and we have made and we have obtained, but they're just toys. From my car to my home to this laptop, everything is a toy. And they are bound to be destroyed or gone or taken away at any given time. It was so easy for me to pack and be ready when the fires were declared. Everybody was saying, like, I have like 3 days, I'm hearing, I have to pack. And I'm thinking, you haven't packed yet? They said, you did? I said, yeah. And an hour after you said it, it was done like in 15 minutes because I'm very clear about what I'm going to take. And those are just essentials, and everything else, I was like, sorry. I took some photos. My daughter said, please, Mom, we have no history. Can you please save the photos for us?
Mhm.
I said, sure. So I put the photos in there. I put like documents in there and just basics. It was just bye bye everything. I may not see you. But it was that easy because I had that much practice. And somebody may say, as a client of mine said, maybe your home is not as fancy as mine. That's true. If you've built a home that is like, I don't know, 80 million or whatever, you have a different attachment to it. But the fact is, I hope that whatever you purchase, whatever you obtain and possess, you do it and treat it like a toy, because they all are a toy. And every toy needs to be dropped when we leave this experience. So it's like, or we leave an experience, not the whole experience, but an experience. So that's
Yeah.
why I can get excited. It's like, oh, new toys, new people to play with.
So we're talking about material things.
Yep.
So material things is one category. Then we have things like relationships.
Yes.
Either relationships, it could be our life partner, or relationships with our children, with colleagues. Let's take the example of a relationship with a partner. Assuming that it's not an abusive relationship and it is a tolerable relationship, to the person who says, I can't be happy because my partner is not like this or that. My partner is too, let's take a common example. He's self-absorbed. Let's say a woman talking about her husband. He's a workaholic. He's not present. And how can I be happy if I'm in a relationship where I feel non-existent to my husband, or he's not even giving any energy to this relationship or my kids?
Sure. And my answer would be, from that state, they will not be happy. But if they considered their partner and as an experience, one experience they're having, while remembering, I call it taking it to the higher grounds, while remembering the bigger picture of life, the joy of being in existence, because there are two things happening. My existence has joy. My relationship with my partner doesn't. It doesn't bring me happiness. This is the small one experience. This is the state for me of being in joy. So this is much bigger, but hey, right now I'm really activated and we're sitting in the same room. I'm experiencing it. This in meaning experiencing something that is bringing you sadness or suffering in the context of larger state, as you called it, true joy, is extremely different than seeing your little experience as unhappiness and assuming, because that's what mind is assuming, the larger picture of life is also unhappiness and lack of joy. They are completely two different experiences, and I have experienced both of those. That's how I know. I've been in suffering and in, actually particularly in a difficult situation and relationship, while feeling miserable and seeing life as miserable. And I have been with a different person that I have been unhappy, but I was in that state of joy. And that gave me completely different sense of commanding how I lead myself and what decisions I make. One is out of desperation. Life is bad. I am bad. You are bad. Everything is bad. The other one is, this is not working for me, but I have a lot of other things happening in life, which includes my existence and joy.
I actually want to know how you would handle that situation? Just imagine you're in that relationship,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Your husband is now not really physically present. He's emotionally not present. Let's just say you're not working. You're a mother who's a stay-at-home mother. How would you deal with that situation?
Mm. Great question. Is this permanent state of my partner, or is it just one-off thing? Because if my partner in that moment is doing something, is very different than if this is a pattern of their behavior. So let's say it is a pattern. I assume this was
Pattern.
okay. It's a pattern. That's the way they are. Okay. So now in this, the question is, I go back to, I'm sorry, the book I've written is in my mind. So I go back to this. Am I seeing this in my survival mode? Meaning, am I thinking all is bad, I am bad, my partner is bad, life is just bad? Or am I seeing this is not working, but I have choices? Because in survival mode, there is only one choice, and that's the choice of survival. What do I do tonight to just deal with this person in my life? But when you look at it, when you come out of survival, when you are aware of the bigger picture of life, then the question is spacious. The options are far more available to you than that. For instance, in that state, I would just go to more misery in the survival mode. I will look at my children, I will look at my partner, and I would decide and conclude that I just am bound to be unhappy and some other forces need to come to
I just
rescue
want to
me.
know how Mitra, not the survival Mitra, the Mitra today, if she was in that situation, how would you deal with that situation?
I can tell you what Mitra even then did when
What?
that exact situation that you're saying occurred.
Yes.
I packed up my children. I decided to go to a place that I can create a life that would be suitable for me and my children. I never complained. Nobody heard anything. This is huge, by the way, negative about my partner at the time. Nobody, nobody,
Mm,
including my family members, because whatever happened, it happened in that sacred space, what we call family or marriage, whatever you want to call it.
mm,
And I did what I could do, which was survive first. I was in a foreign country. I mean, the context is important. I had gone to another country only because the father of my children, or my ex-husband, was living there. I didn't know anyone there. I didn't have any family there. And I did have the option of not going there. But I decided to go there because just because I decided not to be with the father of my children doesn't mean I could separate my children from their father. That
mm,
wasn't a choice I could make. I went there, I built a life, I worked hard, I came out of survival mode, and that was my decision. It didn't work for me. And
mm.
I don't
So
think there is anything wrong with him. I don't think he's a bad person. I think that was an unsuitable match that I have made. And I took complete responsibility. I needed to experience this man. I needed to bring these particular children that could only be made by this man and myself in order to experience what I did. And I respect and honor that.
yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it's understanding that you're a free-willed being. You have full agency, full choice on what kind of life you want to create for yourself and what kind of partner you want to be with. And if you're in a relationship that's not fulfilling to you and is not nourishing your life, then leave the relationship is what I hear you saying.
Yes, leave the
And and I,
experience.
and I leave the experience. I can hear a common resistance to this.
Mhm.
What about my children?
Uh,
And
I
they're
can tell
what
you.
about I want to, I would do that, but I have my children and I don't want to traumatize them with a divorce. I don't want to create more difficulty for them.
Mhm, mhm. I would never ever recommend to anyone to leave their partners because that's none of my business. I do not have all the facts, but I can tell you that a miserable home that both parents are unhappy is far more traumatizing than a home that has only one parent at a time, I hope, and and it's much happier. The question is for each individual, please understand, I'm not recommending divorce, that if they are capable of staying in their joy while going through experiences, because it's going to be hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be, I mean, there is no partying happening there. I left the extremely comfortable home financially, and I took almost nothing. I said, whatever you feel comfortable, I am not going to fight. I will never, ever take anyone to court, especially not for money. Maybe I'll take them to court for human rights purposes, but not for money. He knew that I wouldn't do it. So I almost got nothing. So I had to start a life of a working single mother and taking care of my children in a new country that I had no one. I mean, there are stories I can tell, and we will talk about them, I'm sure, in other podcasts, but it was extremely challenging. But it fed my soul. I was happy to work hard. I was happy to get up literally at 5 a.m. almost every day to cook dinner, prepare the lunch for my kids, eat breakfast, get ready. And by the time my kids would get up, it looked like I slept in my suit and I was all ready to go. My kids for years didn't see me in pajamas in the morning, because by the time they woke up, mommy was ready and everything was ready.
Mm.
It was very, very hard. I don't know how I did it, but I know that determination of saying, I'm not going to stay in misery. More importantly, I am not going to make my children more miserable because I've left.
So, yeah, you bring up a really good point, and I resonate with this a lot. What I hear you saying is if you want to stay in the relationship for the kids, then one has
Accept it.
to find total peace and acceptance with the way that their husband is. If you can be at total peace that you have an absent husband who's physically and emotionally absent,
Or
and
wife,
you're or
partner.
wife, whatever, uh, then fine, stay in the relationship.
Yep.
And if you can be in your joy and create a life, that brings you joy, he does his thing or she does her thing, and I do my thing, and we raise the kids. It's not ideal, but this is how we do it, and there's peace and acceptance. Then great. But if you cannot accept the way that your partner is, and we can acknowledge that we have no control over how they choose to be, then the best thing actually we can do, not only for ourselves but for our children, is to leave that relationship.
Yeah. It is not what you do, Ben. It's with what attitude you do, either staying or leaving, because both of them can make you and your children miserable. So it's really taking charge. It's really, really accepting what is so that you can do what you need to do. I didn't know what it meant to be a working single mother in another country with no support. I found out a harsh way, but every time that I would go down, I said, this is what I decided to do. And that's the difference between adults and children. Children don't understand consequences, or they don't take it. But adults say, that's the price. That's the price of freedom. And it seems at times that it's very expensive price, but I have chosen that and I'm going to stay with that. And if there's anything I can change to make it better, I would. And if I can't, I'm going to, and sometimes it's good to just make it like sections. Like for next 3 years, I'm going to do this. Even if you're staying next 5 years, I'm going to do that. So when you have a plan, mind settles down and it becomes easier to go through it. It was tough, but it was also liberating. I also was leading the life I wanted. And that's when actually everything flourished for me, with a lot of difficulty. Professionally, was acknowledged, and I was growing. I, from nowhere, I had clients that I would have never dreamed of having. So there's also magic in the air when you have that clarity and that intention that supports you. But you need to have that clarity, because that sense of understanding that these are just experiences and I'm going through them, and there must be something that I need to learn. If that's the attitude, as opposed to I'm bad, you're bad, the world is bad, it's a very heavy way of living, and it's
Yeah.
usually not conducive to growth.
Growth or joy,
Or
experiencing joy,
joy,
it creates a
definitely.
lot of clouds. So many gems here, Mitra. Thank you. I'd say the biggest takeaway that I experience is really about one, the relationship that we have to our external circumstances. It's not about the external circumstances themselves. It's about our relationship to them and the meaning that we give them.
Yes. And for me is the biggest thing is your relationship, your inner relationship with joy and understanding how
Yeah.
that energy is part of your very existence and your natural inheritance.
All right. We hope you all have a beautiful and joyful day. Until next time.
See you later.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. For a list of the links and other resources referenced in this episode, check out the podcast description.
If you're benefiting from our podcast, we'd love if you could help us reach more people by subscribing. Your support means the world to us. From our hearts to yours, we thank you.